Students, kind of an adulting 101 type of thing. So it's open to all students, but it's a lot of stuff, especially as you reach junior, senior year, that's really pertinent. Things that, so I worked as the alumni director, and things that a lot of recent grads will say, I wish I knew this kind of stuff. And when they find out about dollars and donuts and things that we're really doing to try to invest in students, they say, I really wish we had things like that when I was a student. So this is just a great resource, a great asset, and I appreciate you guys recognizing that and being out here and getting donuts, because Hinckley has really good donuts. I'm going to just mention real quick the different topics that we're going to have coming up. And just disappeared. Sorry about that. So next week it's going to be Jackson Young Professionals. Somebody's going to be here for that. So that's a team of 39-year-olds down to like 22-year-olds. So it's a lot of recent grads that live in the Jackson community. People that work at a lot of different corporations and organizations, a lot of people that work at consumers, and consumers is kind of the main driver financially behind it. So they're going to have some representatives here just to talk about what it looks like to plug into a professional network when you graduate, whether that's Jackson or elsewhere. Following that will be Matt Jen, and he's going to be talking about joyful giving, just something that we have to incorporate into our lives as a blessed people. What does it look like to bless others? November 3rd, CP Federal Credit Union is going to have a guest here talking about interviewing and professionalism. November 10th, Justin Madsen, a recent grad, is going to talk about what a long-term transition after college looks like. So kind of just as you go out, what does it look like to transition well? And then the last week, November 17th, is going to be Matt Hill, and he's going to be talking about ethical spending. So just going to do it in a fun way. I'm sure if you've had Matt Hill, he's something. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Olivia Olmstead, who's going to introduce our speaker today.
So another thing to touch on what Steve said, if you bring 5 out of the $6 in donuts, you get like a little prize. Yeah, so you get a coffee card, which is like the best prize you can get. So come, make sure you sign up when you come. Don't just sign up and leave. Stay for the short, really like 10-15 minutes at the beginning. So be thinking about questions you have, just finances in general, specific to the presentation. They're here to help you. And then the rest of the time, if you need to go after the 10-15 minute mark, go ahead and go. But if you want to stay, come closer, we'll ask questions and have more of like a discussion. Randy Lewis is a professor here in finance, economics, and international business, and he's been here for 28 years. And he runs, it used to be a club, but it's now a one-credit class, and it's a student-run mutual fund called Student Managed Investment Fund. So he might touch a little bit on that, and then he works with small cell groups to like talk about investing money and such. So super personable guy. I'm sure he is here to 100% push you guys into a good financial future. And thanks for coming, and enjoy your donuts. If you need to get more, just be quiet when you do it.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me just say I've got a few students here that are have been in my classes, and they probably heard this over and over again. So probably not getting much new, but hopefully maybe a couple things. I think first thing, I wish I would have had something like this when I was your age. I wish that someone had approached me and said, you really need to start thinking about these things ahead of time rather than waiting until you're 30 or 40 years old. Probably, I don't know how that would have changed anything much in my life, but it certainly would have helped between my ages, age of 20 and 30, it would have helped a lot. And even now, when I think about how I could have started saving early on, as opposed to waiting until I was, in my 30s, really is when I started saving, dramatically saving. It would have made a huge difference. So the one thing, if you get nothing else out of this today, and I want you to ask lots of questions, by the way, because I can answer any question, even one that might seem kind of elementary to you or to the rest of us. It doesn't matter. Just get it out so that I can answer that question, and you need to know that, so I want to answer it. First of all, I just want to say that, if you get nothing else out of this today, the main thing you need to understand is that time is of the essence. If you don't get started when you're 21, 22, whenever you graduate and get that first job, if you don't get started saving then, you stand to lose literally millions of dollars in your retirement account as you approach 65. So if you don't remember anything else, just remember, start saving early and start with the percentages that I suggest to you. If you don't, you'll definitely wish you had later on when you realize what's missed. So I'm going to talk about some of these issues today, and I'm going to start with some questions upon graduation, what is the average student loan debt? Anybody want to take a guess? Take a quick guess. Average student loan debt? 50, 80, 35. Actually, it's probably between, it was 29,000 in 2016 or 2015. And so now it's higher than that. It's probably between, and I don't know for sure, but I know it's between 30 and 40,000, somewhere in that range. I know that sounds kind of low for some people because it seems like, if tuition is 20 grand and, that's 80 grand over 4 years, and it seems like, how are you going to pay down 2/3 of that or whatever, plus room and board. So you've got, this huge debt you've got to think about, and that's got to be paid back at some point. So the next thing I wanted to ask you is, what do you think the average credit score is out of 850, 850 being the top? There's different FICO scores out there. There's probably 100 different scores, but there are probably 10 major scores, and they're typically up to 850, so 850 is perfect. And what do you think the average credit score is out there for college students, you guys graduating? That's between 600 and 700, okay, between 600 and 700. My two boys, I've been careful with my boys, to make sure they did all the right things, and they're still doing the right things because they have a father who, understands this stuff. So it's easy for me to kind of talk to them like every week or every month about these issues, and their scores are, this is sort of giving you an idea of where you could be if you're not there. Their scores are, like, my older boy is 759 and my younger boy is 739 or 738 or something like that. So that's kind of the highest you can be in your age group, because you're not going to get up to 850. I can guarantee that, because you have to have some lengthy credit history in order to establish a credit score that high. So none of you have had that kind of credit history, so you're going to be looking at probably 750 as being a really good score. So make that your goal. I guess that would be one thing that I would suggest to you. Make that your goal, to look at all the things that make up a good credit score, and you just Google it, basically. It's really easy, just Google it. And you'll have like 5 or 6 different things that you can look at. And make sure that you've looked at each one of those and made some improvements, or you're making improvements on an ongoing basis for all these things that are within, make up the credit score. For example, paying on time, that's pretty simple. That's one of them. Always pay your bills on time, and then your credit score will stay up there in the 700s, right? And then things like a variety of credit. So, you have, maybe a car loan, and I don't like debt, and nobody likes debt, but in order to have a good credit score, you kind of have to have a little bit of history there in order to show that you can pay it back. So let's say my boy bought a motorcycle, so he got a motorcycle loan in his name, and he got a credit card or a debit card and a credit card, and I told him, always pay the balance off every month, never charge unless you have to, and if you do charge, immediately pay it off. Use your savings account or checking account and pay it off, just so you don't have any outstanding debt, because that'll hurt your credit score if you have outstanding credit from one month to the next. So having several different types of credit is important, but don't overdo it. Don't have 20 credit cards. Maybe have one credit card or one debit card, and just make sure that you have maybe 3 different types of credit. That'll improve your score, okay? But anyway, I'm not going to get into all 5 or 6 different, criteria, but I'm just going to say look at those and improve on those every month, especially when you graduate. You can't do a lot right now other than just make sure you pay all your bills and maintain. Well, just look at the 5 and decide what areas of those 5 you can do a better job with right now. And then when you graduate, then you can start focusing on all 5, okay? And there is really no reason why everyone in this room couldn't have a credit score of 750. And if you have anything above 720, you would be considered really good credit, and you would get the lowest interest rates on any car loans or leases or mortgages or whatever. So try to make that a goal, 720 and above, but try to hit 750 and then just keep improving it. So when I was your age, my credit score was probably something around low 700s, and I improved it up into the low 800s or mid 800s. So that's kind of where you can be if you really watch your credit. You really probably will never hit 850. So I've hit 839, I've hit 8, I don't think I ever hit 840. So what you need to do is just kind of watch that and make sure you're looking at it all the time, and then make sure that when it gets updated, you know why it got updated and how you can get it back to where it was, okay? So that's one thing. Credit score is so important. It's kind of like the identity, your financial identity. And so it helps you get good jobs, it helps you get lower insurance rates, it helps you get lower costs on a lot of things, especially loans. So it's not just about money or about lending money, it's about pretty much your whole life. So getting that first job, they're probably going to look at your credit score. And if you have a credit score of 600, you may not get the job, I'll be honest with you. So make sure that you look at that. How much should you save when you get your first job? Anybody have an idea of what percentage of your income you should save? Ideas? What are you thinking?
15%.
That's excellent. Actually, that's really good. I save 20%. I'm probably a little higher than most, but you know, if you can do 20, great. If you can't quite do 15, start with 10. Try not to do less than 10. And you don't necessarily need to go more than 20, but you know, that'd be great, obviously. But 15 is a really good kind of in-between number that I think if you hit that number from the time you're 20, let's say you get your first job, you're 22 years old, and you start doing 15% right away, I can show you some numbers that would be totally unbelievable to the entire room. And I can tell you that based on current salaries of college students going out into the world today, if you save 15% of your salary from the age of 22 to 65, and you're making the average pay, you're going to have, well, depending on if you look at inflation or not, if you're looking at including inflation, you're going to have over $10 million by the time you're 65. If you look at in today's dollars, you're probably going to have a little under 10 million, but it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10 million. Now, you might think I'm crazy, but it's absolutely true. I could show you the numbers. I'm not going to get into that on my financial calculator, but I could prove it to you. But I'm not going to. You just got to take my word for it, that you would be between $5 and $15 million, depending on if you include inflation or not, based on a 15% savings rate. Now, another thing is that if you make $50,000 a year and never get a raise, how much, that would be not including inflation, right? That'd be like, we call that nominal dollars, or not including inflation, which puts everything in today's dollars so we can understand the number better. So if you say if you get $50,000 a year, you're going to save 15%, so you're going to save $7,500 a year, right? And you want to know what kind of return you're going to get. You know, when you're young, you probably should focus more on stocks and equities, and then when you get older, you tend to like do less of that and more in fixed income, so you get like a fixed percentage every month, but you know it's not going to be very high, but you have to do that as you get older because you have to reduce the risk as you get older. So, but at first, you have very little money accumulated in your account, so there's not really much to risk, right? And you have an entire life in front of you to see the stock market do this, and so it actually makes a lot more sense for you to focus more on stocks when you're young and then begin to diversify outside of stocks when you get to be 30, 40, 50, 60. So I'm going to just do a quick calculation. The average stock market return in the United States is about 11% for large company stocks, so that'd be about an average over the last 90 years. So that's the average annual rate of return, or return on your stocks. So I'm going to use the 7,500. Now this is in today's dollars. Remember, this is not including inflation. Because if you include inflation, the number is going to be a whole lot higher. So that would assume that when you're making $50,000 a year now, by the time you're 65, you should be making around $200,000 or above, $200,000 to $300,000. Just to give you an idea, my dad started out at $3,000 a year as a professor, and when he retired, he was making $90,000. So that just gives you kind of an idea of how inflation can affect, and also promotions and things like that. So. You know, so 50,000 is that just doesn't include any inflation or any promotions that you're going to have during your lifetime. So if we took 7,500 and we put 11% in there for your return, and we do 22 to 65 is what? 43 years. So 43 years. I mean, that's gonna give you $6 million, okay? That's gonna give you $6 million if you save 15% from the time, and that's in today's dollars, that's in today's spendable dollars. You don't need $6 million, believe me, when you retire, you don't need that much in today's dollars. But that number would be something more like, between probably 15 million if you include the actual numbers as you get raises and as you get promotions, okay, with inflation. Although you probably have around 15 million, but without inflation, you got 6 million. So now, well, the same problem, assume 12%. I assumed 11. Well, let's try it. 12%. I can do it real quick. How much would you have? 6 million goes to 8.1 million. So if you get 1% more, you go from 6 million to 8.1 million, and that's in today's dollars. That's not how much you're actually going to have. You're going to have, like I said, more like 15 million. Now, for those of you who feel like money isn't a big issue to you, I'm sure that if you're here, money probably is important to you. But if it isn't a big issue, remember you can always give it away because if you have too much money, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. Believe me, it's not a problem. You can always give that money away to good Christian organizations, And so don't worry about accumulating too much. I don't think that's an issue. How much will you have in 43 years? Okay, and I already talked about that. How about if you gave up $4 a day for let's say you go to Starbucks every day and you spend $4. Okay, so if you spend $4 a day at Starbucks in 43 years, let's see how much that would be. Okay, let's see if anybody can guess. Let's see, at the stock market rate of 11%. Okay, and then what did we say, $4, okay. All right. Okay, so can anybody guess what giving up one Starbucks a day how much you could end up saving if you instead put that money into the stock market for the next 43 years, from age 22 to 65, 22 to 65. Anybody guess? I got the number right here. Let's see how close you can get. You want to guess? What do you think? 2.5 what? No, you're really high. It's not that much. Starbucks isn't that much, okay? 2.5 million, yeah. No, it's actually 1.5 million. You were actually closer. Well, they're actually about the same, right? The distance, yeah. But you guys got the average of the two of you was perfect. So, 1.5 million. So Starbucks a day costs you $1.5 million. Okay? I know, that sounds crazy, but it's true. I just calculated it. My calculator doesn't lie. So, let's see. Whoops. Well, I got the other. Hang on one second. I've got to go back to. I want to talk about something different now. So the next thing I want to talk about, now I know that we don't have a lot of time, so we're probably about out of time actually. So what I want to do is right now take some questions, and then anybody who wants to stay a little longer, I'm going to show you a budget that I developed personally with another student, another undergraduate student, many, many years ago. And I've been using this budget myself to save my marriage. I'm just kidding. Well, my wife would say it did save our marriage. No, I don't know what she would say, but she would say she loves the budget. And before the budget, she would have said, "I hate the way you manage your money." And because I don't have any money. I don't have any control over my money. I'm just like you have to hand me money, and then I feel like I'm like your slave or something. So it's like, it really did help our marriage when I established this budget. Anyway, before we get into this, for those of you who want to stay and watch this, first of all, let me say that if you want either one of these presentations, just leave your email. We have a little sheet there with a pen. Leave your email address, I'll email it to you, okay? I'll email both of them to you if you want. Actually, I'll just email both of them to everybody, whoever puts their name on that list. So, questions about anything I've talked about so far?
For someone if someone has a credit score like upper 500 and they really has to get a credit card, what's the best way for them to raise their credit score?
So, just say it a little bit louder. Now, you say that it's in the upper 500s and you haven't gotten a credit card, right? Or do have a credit card?
Not me personally.
But somebody else has a credit card, who doesn't have a credit card, or does have a credit card?
Doesn't.
Should they get a credit card is your question.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not going to hurt because you establish credit. it's gonna actually improve your credit score. But you gotta be really responsible. If you get a credit card and you don't pay off the balance every month, it's not gonna help your credit score. But if you get a credit card and you pay off the balance and you're really responsible with it, it will improve your credit score. So, I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, like, I mean, she's really hesitant for the credit card, so she's.
Well, maybe a debit card would be better. Does she have a debit card? Okay, well, a credit card's not gonna, look, credit cards are horrible for people. It's kind of like guns, right? I hate to bring up guns right now, but it's like guns. It's like guns. If you have a gun, you could be safe with it or you could be horrible. You know, it could be disastrous, right? Credit cards are the same way. You know, debt is the same way. If you're responsible with your debt, it's a very positive thing for your life. If you are irresponsible with your debt, it's going to be very negative. It's going to hurt you so much. And it's going to ruin your marriage. I mean, 70% of marriages end because of financial problems. 70% of marriages end because of number one reason, financial problems. So it's going to ruin your life if you don't manage your credit properly, right? So when you get married, one of you, hopefully, will be able to be responsible with credit so they can hold the other one accountable or whatever. You know, it's always better if both are responsible, but if at least one is responsible, they can hold the other person accountable. The worst situations that I've ever seen are when both husband and wife are totally irresponsible with credit. It's a disaster. It's a total disaster. I've counseled people like that. It is so difficult to try to get those people through that process. I mean, it's almost impossible. So when you look for a mate, sorry, but when you look for a mate, make sure you think about that kind of stuff because that can ruin your marriage, number one. It can cause you lots of heartache during your life. And, you know, you just got to be responsible with your credit. It's just so important. Question?
Yeah, so I have like good credit, like 700s. I've had it for like 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
But it's mostly like 2 or 3 credit cards. And so when I apply for like a lease on a car or a house, like especially the car lease, it's like you have good credit, but you didn't get approved because it's only like one type of credit.
Yeah.
But I can't get a new type of credit if I don't get approved. So like, what do you think is the next step?
Well, there are credit cards. Are you talking about a credit card in particular?
What?
A credit card, maybe?
I have 2.
You have 2 already. Well, okay. So an auto loan, what about, so you can't get a lease either?
Yeah, I can't get a lease because like I have it's like 710. So I assume that this
Well,
is a position.
there are places that will lend you money. There are places that will give you a lease. You just have to find them, okay? I promise you there are thousands of places that'll do that. But you have to try to get a good rate. That's the problem. So don't just pay a really high interest rate just so you can get that credit. Make sure that you check 20 or 30 places. Bankrate.com, for example. Bankrate, one word.com. Check them, and they've got all the lowest rates, and you know, for car loans, house loans, high savings rates, you know, whatever. Check them first, and then you can decide what you're going to do from that point. And you can, you know, apply to 2 or 3 different places. The problem is every time you apply to a credit store, a bank or whatever, it hits your credit report and it lowers your credit score. So there are some hits on credit scores that are a hard hit. They call it a hard hit, and that will lower your credit score. Others are called a soft hit, and they won't lower your credit score. So always ask the question, is this going to be a hard hit or a soft hit on my credit?
Like when I look at my FICO report, it says inquiries. So is inquiries?
Inquiries is, yeah, if it says inquiries, that means it's a hard hit.
Okay.
So, but it wouldn't even appear there if it was a soft hit.
Okay.
So for example, last lease I got at Toyota, they don't, I've leased with them for years, so they didn't do a hard hit because I've already got my credit established, so nothing appeared on my credit report. Okay? So if you go to a brand new dealer you've never gone to before, you might get a hard hit, or you know, a car you've never leased before. But if you're working with somebody over and over again, year after year, then you probably get a soft hit. Yeah.
What is the best way to start saving?
The best way is like, okay, so human nature is that we don't save, right? Because we want the Starbucks instead, right? So, you know, I mean, that's me. I mean, that's totally me. So I have to force myself, I have to box myself in, right? I literally build myself a box around my body. And so basically I set up a system so that I have to save, so I'm forced to save. So money coming out of my paycheck, so I never see it. money coming out of my checking account electronically every month or every 2 weeks, stuff like that. That's what I mean by building a box. You have to sort of make yourself save. You can't count on your human nature to make you save, because it won't happen. Does that make sense? So you have to purposely set up a system that forces you into doing something you don't want to do, because nobody wants to save, everybody wants to spend, right?
So would just like a savings account at a bank suffice, or is there like
That's
better
fine.
options?
Start out with that, and then at some point in the future, you can start putting money into a mutual fund, and like Fidelity or Vanguard. I recommend Vanguard. Vanguard is really the best one. They have the lowest fees. So when you do Vanguard, you're going to need a couple grand. So you're going to need to save in that savings account for a while until you accumulate 2 grand, and then you can then move that money from your savings account to the Vanguard account and do this total stock market fund or something like that. Okay, and then you get started with that, and then you can keep adding to that month after month, or do it through your employer. That's a great way to do it. Just do it through your employer. The employer has a 401k, for example. They will match you, say 3 to 3, so you put in 3%, they match 3, and you can do another, that's 6, so 15 would be 9% more, so now you got 15% going in, right? So you put in 3 plus another 9, you put in 12, they put in 3, you're up to 15%. And because of the tax advantages of a 401k, you're not going to see very much coming out of your paycheck because you're shielded from federal taxes. So you're not going to see as much as you think coming out of your paycheck. It's going to be a minor hit. And so you'll get used to living on that lower amount of money, and so it's not going to seem like a cut for you because you're going to do it right from the very, very first day you're on the job. You walk into that HR office and you say, I want to put in 15% of my pay, including your match, right? I mean, you could do 18% in that case. You could do 15 on your own and 3 more for them. That'd be 18. That'd even be better, right? But I'm just saying 15, including their match. That's great. So that's a good way to do it. Okay? Yeah.
So is that separate from an emergency fund then? Like emergency?
Yes, an emergency fund is something that you set up in case, you have a car repair or something like that. So what they normally recommend is about 3 to 6 months of your annual pay. So if you're making, so let's just say maybe you're making $50,000 a year, that would be somewhere between $12,000 and $25,000, right? So that would be an emergency fund. I would start out with 12, and and then once you build up that emergency fund, then you can start thinking about your retirement account. Well, no, immediately start thinking about your retirement account because that'll come out of your paycheck every month, so or every 2 weeks. So yeah, I would definitely start with the retirement account and try to do the emergency fund at the same time. Just kind of gradually build up a emergency fund, maybe $200 a month or whatever. Yeah. Other questions? Other questions? I'm here to answer your questions. Let me help you. Anybody else? Yes?
Yeah, so this 11% you're getting, how do you get that?
How do you get what?
You're saying saving 11%. If you put money into a savings account, you're not getting 11%, so how do you get 11%?
Okay, so when I talked about Vanguard, I mentioned Vanguard Total Stock Market Fund. That would return about that percentage. So, but you have to start saving at, say, your bank or credit union first, then move that 2 grand, and when you save that 2 grand, move it over to Vanguard. It's Vanguard.com, and then you start an account there, and you, like I said, that's one option. The other option is just do it through your employer. Your employer, you go to the HR department when you start to work there, and they will have all kinds of forms on how much you want to set aside for retirement. It's dark. Halloween. Okay, boo. Whoa. All right, so I can answer questions in the dark. Anybody else have a question? Yeah. That you probably feel freer to ask questions in the dark. Well, I don't know. I guess that pretty much ends it unless you guys have other questions. I can't go over my budget. Oh, there we go. Okay, so so if anybody has to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and start my essential budget. Again, I'm not going to say it saved my marriage, but I'm going to say that it helped my marriage. And I don't want to be one of the 70%, that gets divorced and lists financial reasons as the reason for divorce. So I don't think I can do it on the computer right now because it's down, but I will just tell you about it real quick. And I will send it to you. If you put your name down, your email down, I'll send it to you. So here's the deal. When you get married, yeah.
If you send it to alumni@arbor.edu, we can just email everybody.
Okay, that'd be great. That'd be great. I'll do that. Send it to you.
Actually, or Elisa, someone. Yeah.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
You've been emailing
Yeah,
me.
me
Yeah,
or
so I'll
Elisa
send
or
it to you.
the alumni.
Okay, so the essential budget works like this. Listen up because this is really critical. So we start out with a main account. We call it the main account. So for a married couple, they would have 3 bank accounts, 3 checking accounts, okay? Set up 3 checking accounts for a married couple. For a single person, you only have to have 2. So the way it works is you have a main account and then you have a satellite account. So I'll call it a satellite account because the satellite account is spending on anything you want, basically. Fun money. We'll call it fun money account and main account. The serious account and the fun account, okay? So, all right, so this is like what works for me because my human nature is to spend, spend, spend and not save, right? And it's also to want to control everything, right? I want to control everything because I know that I'm a financial person, so my wife doesn't know anything about finances, so I don't want her to control anything, right? So, you know, that's just the way it works. So, she complained about that, so I said, all right, so if I set up a fun money account for you and a fun money account for me and a main account for both of us, here's how it works. All your paychecks from both people, you know, if you're both working, come into the main account. They get transferred into the main, direct deposited into the main account, right? So you get this big chunk of money sitting there in the main account. Now, then you automatically electronically transfer X dollars to the fun money husband account and the X dollars to the fun money wife account, okay? Now, how do you determine those dollars? First, you go to the main account and you say, I've got my car payment, I got my house payment, I got my giving, right, to my church, I've got my student loan payment, I've got my utility bills, I've got my internet bill, I've got my savings has to come out of the main account, my savings. So that Vanguard transfer, unless you're doing it through your employer before you even see your paycheck, right? So if you're doing it that way, you don't need to worry about savings as much, but your emergency fund should come out of the main account. So once you add up all these things for the main account, let me just list them again, the utility bills, the house payment, the car payment, the student loan payment, the food, well no, you don't need to put food in there, take it back. You don't want to put only fixed expenses that are predetermined, like the student loan payment is $400 a month or whatever. That comes out of the main account, all right? So then you determine, you know, you could have the food money come out of the main account or you could have it come out of the husband or the wife account. So when I say fun money, it may not all be fun money. It could be some not fun money. But if you have all the not fun money coming out of the main account, then whatever's left over is truly just money you could blow. You got it? Because if you've given all your money to the church, you've saved, you know, you got your savings account, you got your mortgage payment, you got all your bills taken care of, the only thing left over is money you can blow, right? So let's say there's $400 a month left over for husband and wife, right? So you're going to have that $400 or maybe $100 a week transferred over to those fund accounts once a week. And you can do that with any bank account. You can electronically set up a transfer that goes over once a week for a certain amount of money, and that becomes the husband's fund money and the wife's fund money. And when I talk about fund money, you know, it can include your gas money in your car, okay? All right, so that's maybe not fun, but it can include your gas. Things you don't really know exactly how much you're going to cost, right? So your gas, maybe your Starbucks, you know, habit, which hopefully you don't have because I talked about that. You know, your clothing, things like that. My wife wanted to have her own budget. She wanted to have her own money for her clothing. She actually, her fund money included the groceries because I figured out about how much we were spending for groceries and we added that to her fund money because we didn't want to put it in the main account because that was really for, you know, fixed expenses. So I did, you know, I paid for all the car expenses out of my fund money account because we didn't know how much that was going to be for sure. So we knew oil changes, you know, and tires and all that kind of stuff. I paid for that. So we kind of figured out in a budget about how much all that stuff costs. And that's how we determined how much money got pushed over to the fund accounts from the main account. So remember, the main account, so the way it works is like if there's $5,000 worth of expenses in the main account, you leave the $5,000 in that main account every month, and then anything in excess of $5,000 gets transferred over to the husband and the wife fund account, okay? So that way, you always have enough money to pay your bills that have to be paid every month if you never go below that $5,000, okay? So if I have $9,000 coming in for both husband and wife, and we determined that the fund money portion is $2,000 for each person, then $2,000 goes over to the husband, $2,000 goes over to the wife, the $5,000 stays in the main account, and all the bills get paid automatically. And that's another key, is that electronically, all those bills get paid out of the main account every month. The mortgage goes off electronically, the car payment goes off electronically, the student loan payment gets paid electronically. You don't have to do anything, you just sit there. I told my wife I could die today and the bills still get paid because I've got it all set up. It's like a robot, right? It's like on autopilot. I just call it autopilot because that's what it does. Everything is, like, you know, when I go overseas, everything gets paid because I've got it all set up electronically to do that, right? So I don't do anything. I just look at the bank account. Oh, it's really boring, actually. I just look at the bank account. Oh, look, looks good. Yeah, looks good. I don't have to do anything. So I love it because I used to spend hours, and literally hours every month, many hours, 10, maybe 20 hours, 10 hours at least, working on the financial stuff. And now I don't do that because it's all automatic. It's all getting transferred and moved automatically and nothing to worry about.
Do you do that through the bank?
Yeah, you do that through the bank. They have transfer. They have a little section where you can do transfers, automatic transfers.
So like you pay all the bills like automatically?
Yeah, all the bills get paid automatically either through the website of the mortgage company. They can take it out of your account, or you can set it up as a bill pay on your own bank account. Either way, I usually try to do it on my bank account, do a bill pay, because I have more control that way. I can stop it suddenly if there's a problem. But I do have some that come directly from the company too, yeah.
So the main account can actually be like a joint account, like for the husband?
Yeah, they're actually all joint accounts, all three.
Oh,
Because if my wife dies, I want to make sure that I have access to her money. And if I die, I want to make sure she has access to my fund money account. So all three accounts are joint. Yeah. That's a good question because, I suppose you could do it so he just has your name on it and the husband just has, you could do it that way, but I don't recommend that because it gets tough. Like I remember when my parents died, that, they were joint, so that was a lot easier for me to help my mom manage all that. Okay, any other questions about the central budget? Again, I will send these out, both of these, so you can take a look at them, but really, it's not that hard. What I just explained, if you can set up 3 bank accounts and just kind of make your main account your sort of pivotal account, and then have these other satellite accounts, it really works well. I've been using it for 20 years now, and my wife is so happy. She's always got a smile on her face, She says we're going to be married until we die, and and all that kind of stuff. And I'm so happy about that. That's what I say. Before she says, "Well, if you don't get this financial stuff straightened out," no, I'm kidding. So yeah, we're good. I mean, couldn't. I mean, if money gets pushed out of the picture as a problem, right, in marriage, you really don't. I mean, then you got just normal problems to deal with, like kids, which is really bad. But actually not. But anyway, anybody else have any other questions? I'm going to wrap it up here.
How do you pick a bank versus credit union?
How do you pick a bank? I personally, okay, probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to just say it. I'm going to say it because I care about you guys. I have a credit union account. I have never had a bank account, like a commercial bank account. Maybe when I was 18 I did, but ever since I took my first job in Columbus, Ohio, I started with a credit union there because they have their own credit union, and I have had a credit union account ever since. The savings rates are higher, the loan rates are lower, the fees are lower. I just love credit unions, okay? That's just my personal opinion. I go all over the world, and I can always use my debit card from my credit union to get money. What I expect you guys to do at this point is hopefully you've listened to everything I've said, and I want you to really internalize this stuff and make sure you do what I just told you, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret it. I absolutely can guarantee that everybody in this room is going to regret it if they don't do at least some of the things, maybe not all the things, but mostly some of the things that I've recommended, especially starting early. Remember I said, if you do nothing else, start young, saving young. When you're 22 or 23 or whatever, first job, start. Now, if you're going to do a graduate degree, obviously you're not going to have that kind of money to set aside. But if you can set aside a little bit, that would be great. So when you take your first job at, say, 25 or 26 years old, it's not the end of the world that you got started a little bit late. I mean, it's not going to help you at all, but it definitely is okay. It's just that you need to get started as soon as you possibly can. And don't let life get in the way, because you always have excuses, right? Always have excuses. I want a new car. I want a new house. I want to do this. I want to do that, right? I want new clothes. I want, get a Starbucks, whatever. There's always excuses. But if you push yourself in a corner, box yourself in and say, this money is going to automatically go out every month, then you can't lose, right? You just have to do it, because there's no other option other than retiring very poor. I don't think anybody wants to do that. Okay?
What do you recommend claiming for taxes?
Claiming, well, like exemptions, you mean? Well, I think, if you have like a married couple and there's no kids too, but you have to kind of look at that and say, okay, if I've got a big refund coming at the end of the year, then I might want to increase that to 3. They have a worksheet that you can actually calculate that and see how many exemptions you need to claim. But start with that, husband and wife, do 2. 1 child, do 3. Okay? Any other questions?
Oh, I don't know if it's a question he was just asking, but when you have kids, you start like earlier.
We did. We started a bank account like when they were really very little. And we put my wife put her name jointly with one boy, and then I put my name jointly with the other boy. And we've guided them through their early life, and by the time they got to be old enough to sass us, they were set, and their financial futures were good. I mean, we have had no issues with our boys in terms of like too much debt or credit card issues, nothing. But you have to raise them purposely to respect money, to be responsible with money. You have to do that, because otherwise, they're going to be like most people, which is irresponsible, right?
And like, when they're still young, obviously they're not, would you take money out of the joint, like the main account to put it into?
Yeah. If you were going to put money in their savings account, like we did $10 a week or something like that, in each account, we would take it out of the main account. Yep. Anything that is a definite number, you know what that number is every month. It's what I call a fixed number. That fixed number, that needs to be transferred over to from the main account. Yeah. The fund money accounts are only for expenses you don't really know how much you're going to be, like clothing. That's a good example. And you don't need to do it. You could actually have a budget set in the main account for clothing, and then just pull that out whenever you needed clothing. If you knew you were going to need $500 a year for clothing, you could put that in the main account and then just pull it out when needed. You could do it that way too. But we preferred to do it in our fund money account. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, we better cut it off. Thank you.